Those who subscribe to awakened biology seem to believe that they possess superior knowledge and can triumph over everything, but what often leads to their failure is precisely common sense. Below are 3 clips that vividly illustrate this, in which awakened women deny simple truths and common sense, ultimately leading to their own embarrassment.
Not difficult, is it, Angelica? I mean, that is what a woman is.
I mean, I don't know why you're obsessed with defining it. Like, what is a man? Like, why do we need these arbitrary...
A man is a male, adult human. I mean, that's it.
Right, okay. I don't know that we need
these are just biological facts, but they're just facts. They're not arguable points, are they?
Well, but
today's intriguing topic truly exemplifies this situation when asked a straightforward question like, what is a woman? Instead of acknowledging an obvious biological fact, Angelica Malin sidesteps the issue and redirects the conversation to an endless philosophical query. Why must we define anything?
I think we have a right to self-identify, and you said you want to...
As what?
If you'd like to be a woman, you can identify as a woman. I don't know why there is such an issue around...
We've literally just seen a male rapist use that scam to get himself put into a female prison where he could attack vulnerable women inside a female prison.
When rules and definitions become ambiguous, it is the lack of clear boundaries that creates opportunities for wrongdoing. This is exemplified by the absurd situations where a perpetrator can evade consequences by hiding behind the guise of gender differences, as Piers Morgan pointed out in their discussion.
When even his ex-wife said it was all a scam.
Which is a terrible, very distressing, isolated incident, and I think it's easy to take that and say that means that no one can identify as a woman.
But
and
it's not an isolated incident, though.
But it's
42% of trans-identifying prisoners in prison are in there for sex crimes. There's actually an advantage, evidently, to identifying as a female, because they never identify as male, because somehow male prisons seem less appealing to them.
Reflecting on these events, we recognize significant gaps in gender identification within the legal system. Offenders have exploited this to avoid male detention environments and continue reoffending in less controlled spaces. Self-identification of gender can sometimes become a dangerous tool for exploitation rather than protection.
Is it limitless, this self-identity?
It's not totally limitless.
What's the limit?
When you're talking about International Women's Day, I don't know why we take the conversation around International Women's Day and make it about this.
But if anyone,
there's so many benefits.
Right, but if anyone, according to you, can identify as a woman, anyone can, right?
I don't see a problem with.
Just literally put the hand up and say I'm a woman.
But it's not an easy thing to do, to go out into the world.
It's very easy.
Easy.
You might think it's easy to say, but to decide to do that, to say this is...
At this point, it is evident that Angelica Malin has realized that continuing to defend her argument is futile, yet her pride prevents her from acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. She clings to ambiguity, trying to uphold flimsy arguments instead of confronting the evident truth that everyone else sees.
Whatever that person decides, but to go out into the world and say, I don't identify as perhaps the sex I was born as.
So why can't I identify... OK, why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
Well, firstly, I mean, it was...
I'm serious. I'm serious. If I can identify as anything without any need to prove I'm actually what that is, why can't I, on International Women's Day, say I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian?
I think taking it to a kind of absurd status,
I think that's
talking about quite a
with
strong
respect, I think that
change.
you'd already opened the absurdity door by saying it is limitless. You can do what you like. Anyone can say, I'm a woman. So I simply ask you, why can't I?
It may sound ridiculous, but the reality is that nowadays, without any evidence, one can self-identify as a woman and demand recognition without anyone questioning it. Furthermore, you would be entitled to enjoy the privileges of being a woman, even if you are still a man. All of this is gradually undermining the rationality of society.
I mean, this point kind of ridicules trans people to an extent.
Actually, I think what you said ridicules trans people, because actually people who go through the full process of transition, who actually go through what we used to call a sex change, which I don't think you can muck around with original biology, but those who actually go through surgical procedure over a number of years, I've got a great respect.
Unable to defend her argument, Angelica Malin seemingly intended to redirect the conversation towards criticizing Piers Morgan, subtly implying that he is disrespectful to the transgender community. This reaction serves as a distraction, steering the debate away from the core issue to avoid facing the weaknesses in her reasoning. However, this only highlights her inability to provide a reasonable justification for defending her inherently absurd argument.
For that very difficult journey they go on. I have zero respect for people who just wallop their hand up and go, suddenly, I'm a woman and I want all the rights that a woman has, and I want to compete, say, in sport. I'm a 6'4" athlete, sprinter, swimmer, whatever, who's competed very mediocrely in male sport. I now want to come in and crush women in swimming pools and in sprinting events and break all their records, perhaps irrevocably, just by saying, I'm a woman. I think that.
How old are your granddaughters?
They are 6 and 8.
Would you support them to get hormone blockers to become the other gender?
I would absolutely support them to get hormone blockers. The idea of one of my granddaughters learning that they're going to start having their period if they don't get their hormones blocked, even though they're identifying and portraying as a male, how horrible that would be. So yes, definitely.
If your granddaughter came to you and wanted to get a tattoo, what would you say?
That would be more difficult. I always told my 3 sons the one thing I ask is please don't get tattoos.
Really? Why tattoos?
There's just something so permanent about it.
Permanent?
It's pretty permanent. It's very difficult to get them lasered off or removed.
You don't think it's like permanent to change your gender?
Clearly, this interview showcased the naivety of those who adhere to awakened ideology when they fail to recognize that transitioning is not a whimsical decision. As a result, they cannot clearly distinguish between individuals who genuinely undergo transitions and those who merely exploit this mechanism. This underscores the critical need to differentiate between those truly seeking identity and those exploiting the awakened cultural system in today's society. The second video in this journey presents a humorous perspective on the contradictions within the thinking of those pursuing awakened culture. This older woman may accept hormone replacement therapy, but refuses a tattoo, which is quite contradictory. In reality, at the ages of 6 and 8, children cannot even decide what they want for breakfast, so how can they be allowed to make such monumental decisions? This is clear evidence that sometimes maturity does not always come with wisdom. Who says adults are always right?
Yesterday, under questioning from Senator Blackburn, you told her that you couldn't define what a woman is.
The next case presents a rather intriguing situation when Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson fails to provide a clear definition of a woman in response to Senator Ted Cruz's inquiry, leaving him to ponder the possible implications. The inability to define this basic concept illustrates the complexity surrounding discussions of gender today. Perhaps this is the time for us to seriously reconsider the definitions we take for granted in a society that is undergoing transformation.
That you are not a biologist, which I think you're the only Supreme Court nominee in history who's been unable to answer the question.
We can clearly see that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson cannot answer questions related to the definition of a woman, revealing not only the sensitivity of the topic, but also raising significant questions about the role of politics in the Supreme Court. Her evasive action may lead the public to wonder whether notions of gender have become taboo in public discourse and whether this affects court decisions in the future.
Let me ask you, as a judge, how would you determine if a plaintiff had Article III standing to challenge a gender-based rule, regulation, policy, without being able to determine what a woman was?
So, Senator, I know that I'm a woman. I know that Senator Blackburn is a woman, and the woman who I admire most in the world is in the room today, my mother.
In response to Judge Jackson's evasion, Senator Cruz illustrated how absurd the entire conversation was by flipping the same logic she had employed throughout their earlier discussion.
But let me ask, under the modern leftist sensibilities, if I decide right now that I'm a woman, then apparently I'm a woman. Does that mean that I would have Article III standing to challenge a gender-based restriction?
When Senator Cruz used the very logic Judge Jackson had applied to counter, it appeared that she began to realize the inconsistencies in her argument.
Senator, to the extent that you are asking me about who has the ability to bring lawsuits based on gender, those kinds of issues are working their way through the courts, and I'm not able to comment on them.
Okay, if I can change my gender, if I can be a woman, and then an hour later, if I decide I'm not a woman anymore, I guess I would lose Article III standing. Tell me, does that same principle apply to other protected characteristics? For example, I'm an Hispanic man. Could I decide I was an Asian man? Would I have the ability to be an Asian man and challenge Harvard's discrimination because I made that decision?
Senator, I'm not able to answer your question. You're asking me about hypotheticals and
Of course, she could not answer the questions based on her own flawed logic, so when Senator Cruz placed her in a difficult position, instead of addressing it, she chose to refuse to comment. This action somewhat proves her shortcomings in defending her viewpoint as a judge.
Well, I'm asking you how you would assess standing if I came in and said, I have decided I identify as an Asian man.
I would assess standing the way I assess other legal issues, which is to listen to the arguments made by the parties, consider the relevant precedents, and the constitutional principles involved.
So, does this mean she identifies as a woman but cannot clearly define the concept? This is perplexing. We all see that the questions Senator Cruz posed were neither overly complex nor unreasonable. On the contrary, they were quite logical and comprehensible. Her vague answers suggest that she is attempting to conceal her progressive views, raising doubts about the validity of her arguments and how she addresses cases in court. In the context of the rapidly spreading awakened culture, there are numerous moments when those who are awakened become ridiculous due to their own unreasonable arguments. However, it is these moments that provide us with opportunities to understand the importance of clarifying definitions and boundaries. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring these intriguing stories. Have a great day!